My name is Haley. I'm 35 years old and work at a logistics center in Chicago. I live alone in a small apartment. It's not fancy, but it's warm enough. But that morning, right after a long, exhausting night shift, my father called. Not to check on me or invite me home for Thanksgiving, but just to say one sentence: "Don't come home anymore, Haley. Your sister needs peace and quiet." No explanation. No hesitation. I stood frozen in the kitchen, phone in hand, my heart slowly going cold in my chest. Over the past 3 years, I had sent back more than $8,000. Every heating bill, every hospital stay for Mom, I covered it all. And yet, with just one sentence, I was erased from the very house I had kept from freezing. Have you ever been pushed out of your own family just because you weren't who they needed at that moment? If you've ever felt like love only came when you were useful, leave a comment below. Tap like if you believe family should never be transactional. And don't forget to subscribe, because what I did next they never saw coming. I still remember that winter clearly, when Mom had a minor stroke and everything in the house seemed to freeze along with the cold wind blowing in. Dad called me at 5 a.m., his voice panicked, a mix of fear and helplessness. "Haley, your mom fell in the kitchen. I don't know what to do. The furnace won't turn on." I was about to leave for my early shift, coffee still steaming in my hand, but my feet felt glued to the floor. The very next day, I personally set up the entire online payment system for the house back in Indiana, where my parents and younger sister still lived. I called the electricity, water, heating, oil, and internet companies, set up auto payments, and linked each account to my own credit card. No one asked. No one said thank you. I just did it because I couldn't stand the thought of them shivering in a freezing house when I could do something about it. Each month, I double-checked the bills, often transferring extra cash into their account just in case something spiked unexpectedly. Mom would sometimes call with a quick thank you, but usually moved right on to talking about Brianna. How she hadn't been sleeping well. How she still hadn't found customers for the new nail salon. How she was really trying, just a bit sensitive. I listened, said nothing. No one asked how many shifts I had worked, how tired I was, or what I had for dinner. Brianna is 4 years younger than me. She was always sick as a kid, always crying, always the center of attention. I was never jealous. I just learned to grow up faster. When Mom got sick, Brianna said she'd take a few months off to care for her. But less than 2 weeks later, I saw photos of her at a fair with friends. Another time, she called asking for capital to open a nail shop in the neighborhood. I didn't protest. But 3 months later, when I visited, the sign was gone and the place was empty. Dad just shook his head and said, "Brianna's still young. She needs time." I nodded while carrying a tray of hot soup upstairs for Mom. It was freezing that day, snow covering the roof. Dad said the furnace was rattling, sometimes shutting off in the middle of the night. I suggested calling a repairman. He said, "Let's wait until after Thanksgiving." I said nothing more, went back to Chicago, and a few days later I canceled my plane ticket to Florida, a trip I had booked a year in advance. It was supposed to be my first vacation in 7 years of nonstop work. I didn't tell anyone. I just sat on the floor of my little apartment, opened my laptop, searched for furnace repair services in Indiana, called 4 places for quotes, then booked an emergency appointment and paid it all with my credit card. I even asked them to call and confirm once the job was done. That night, once I was sure my parents could sleep in a warm house, I finally lay down, my hand on my forehead, and cried without even realizing it. I never told anyone I had canceled that trip. Every time I saw ads with turquoise beaches, I swallowed the disappointment. I kept telling myself, just get through this winter. Things will get better. But winter came again. The next year, Brianna tried running a handmade crafts booth at a local fair. She bought nearly 1,000 bottles of nail polish from China, hired someone to design a logo, and launched an Instagram page to promote it. No orders came in. Eventually, all the stock piled up in the garage. I remember Mom calling, her voice tired and filled with pity. "She's trying so hard, but no one ever taught her how to run a business." I didn't respond. I just asked, "Do you have enough heating oil?" And when Mom went silent, I reopened the account and transferred $300 more. My job isn't easy. I work in a distribution warehouse, overseeing order checks and truck coordination. Each shift is 12 hours long. I'm always there before 6 a.m. wearing tall boots and thick jackets, standing between freezing rows of shelves, sometimes sprinting across the warehouse to fix issues. And yet, when I get home, sit down, the first message I usually get is from Mom. Haley, are you coming home this weekend? Brianna's a bit down. If you do, don't bring up money, it'll upset her. I never brought it up. I only asked, has she found a job yet? And every time I heard the same answer, she's still thinking. Me. I haven't had the luxury of thinking since I turned 20. I worked while studying, slept on dorm floors because I couldn't afford my own room. I lived on cold sandwiches for 3 months just to avoid using my credit card. I skipped replacing my car tires to make sure I could pay the electric bill back home. I never complained. I did it because I thought, if not me, then who? But after that call from Dad, when he so casually removed me from Thanksgiving dinner, even though I was the one quietly keeping the lights on, the water running, the house from freezing, I finally understood. I was never someone they truly needed. I was just a name they remembered when something needed to be paid. And in that moment, a cold realization gripped me. If I disappeared, would anyone even feel the absence? I sat at the dining table for almost an hour after that morning call. My tea had gone cold. The faint early winter light came through the fogged-up window, falling across the table like a thin coat of frost. Dad's words kept repeating in my head, not loud, not fast, but like tiny knives slicing into memory. Brianna is my real daughter. She never abandoned her family for a job like you did. I didn't argue. I couldn't. My throat tightened, not from anger but from an emptiness I couldn't describe. It was like I had been playing the wrong part in a play where everyone else had already chosen the roles. I wasn't a daughter. I was just a logistics officer. I remember gently setting the phone down on the table, my hands still trembling. In my mind, everything slowed down. The way Dad spoke, calm yet final. The way he called my work, abandoning the family. When I was the one who covered the roof repair after a storm. Who arranged emergency heating oil deliveries when Mom texted, "It's freezing, Haley." Who canceled a year-long vacation just to keep their house from falling apart. Yet in his eyes, I wasn't a real daughter. Because I didn't cry loudly. Because I didn't demand to be prioritized. Because I never asked anyone to sacrifice for me. I just did what needed to be done. And they got so used to it they started thinking it was my duty. I opened my laptop. Slowly, deliberately. My fingers typed in the login for every account I had painstakingly set up over the last 3 years. Electricity, water, internet, heating oil, even the backup generator I'd ordered the previous winter after a 3-day blackout. I reviewed every detail one by one, then clicked cancel service or turn off autopay. Each click made my chest tighten slightly. Not because I regretted the money, but because I knew I was cutting off something deeper. A thread I had held tightly for years, even as it tore into me. I had believed that if I was patient enough, gave enough, sacrificed enough, one day they'd look back and see me. But no. To Dad, the real daughter was the one who never took responsibility, who only knew how to frown and be loved. I opened the Excel spreadsheet I'd started during the first year of sending money home. I recorded everything: month, amount, service, purpose. One line read, December, $650, emergency furnace repair. Another, March, $420 hospital fees for Mom. And another, September, $300 covered electric bill Brianna forgot to pay. Each entry was clear, each had a note. Not because I wanted credit, but because I promised myself, one day if anyone asks, I won't have to explain. I'll just show the truth. When I saved the file with the simple name Family U Support Costs, I felt my eyes sting. Maybe some people would call it petty to keep a record like that. But to me, it was proof that I had been there, that I existed, that I had carried the weight, even if they never acknowledged it. My phone buzzed. A text from Mom. Same familiar tone. Haley, if you come home this weekend, please don't say anything that'll upset Brianna. She just broke up with Kyle and hasn't recovered. I didn't reply. Not out of anger, but because I no longer had the words to explain. I couldn't keep living as if my emotions didn't exist. As if I always had to be the one adjusting my behavior to keep everyone else comfortable. I looked out the window. The first snowflakes of the season had begun to fall. Quiet, steady. The street outside my apartment was still empty. Everything felt strangely silent. I stood up, threw on a thick sweater and stepped out onto the balcony. The cold wind slapped my cheek, but I didn't flinch. I tilted my head up, letting the snow land on my forehead, my shoulders. Something inside me was closing. A door, gently but firmly. I came back inside, poured a mug of hot cocoa and sat at my desk. I reviewed every service cancellation email. Each line that read, "Successfully cancelled," felt like a final period on the years I had quietly kept that family from falling apart. And the beginning of something else. Not revenge, but a timely withdrawal. I wasn't tearing anything down. I was just done holding it up. Brianna probably wouldn't understand. She never wondered where money came from. Everything just existed. The lights stayed on, water kept running, food was always there. I never expected her to be grateful. I only hoped that maybe once someone would ask, "Haley, are you doing okay?" But now I knew that question would never come. And I didn't need it anymore. There was a new space inside me. But it didn't feel heavy. It felt like clearing out an old cabinet, throwing away what had lost its shape and realizing, hey, there's room now for something new. I didn't know what that would be, but I felt like I had the right to choose. No longer the quiet shadow of the family. No longer the pillar everyone assumed would always hold. I was a person who deserved to be seen, to be heard, and to be loved unconditionally. The first night after I stopped every payment to the house in Indiana, I tossed and turned, unable to sleep. Outside, snow fell thick and fast, covering the narrow balcony railing. Inside the apartment, the wall heater hummed steadily, filling the room with quiet warmth like a calm heartbeat. I curled up under the old fleece blanket I'd bought during last winter's clearance sale, hugging the little pillow I had hand-stitched myself when I first started living alone. A little after 2 a.m. my phone lit up. A new message from Mom. I wasn't planning to read it, but the screen's faint glow made it impossible to ignore. I picked up the phone. "Mom, the furnace won't turn on. Your dad's been coughing all night. Haley, do you still have the repair company's info?" I read it over and over. My chest didn't freeze. It didn't burn either. Just a quiet, hollow space opened up inside me. I knew they weren't calling the furnace company. They were calling me. Calling the one who always handled it. I didn't reply. Not because I wanted them to suffer, but because I needed silence to finally hear myself. For years, I had jumped out of bed in the middle of the night when they called. Used a credit card I was still paying off just to cover bills for a house that no longer had room for me. But that night, I simply placed the phone face down, took a deep breath, and pulled the blanket up to my chest. No reaction. No explanation. The next morning, I cooked breakfast just for myself, for the first time in years. A soft, sunny side-up egg, a few slices of buttered toast, and a strong cup of coffee. The smell of food filled the little kitchen, the same one where I used to cook for my family when they visited. But this meal, I didn't rush to make extra. Not to share. Not to please. Just to eat. For me. I sat by the window holding my warm coffee, looking out at the street. Neighboring windows were still foggy. A few people were out jogging with scarves, others walking their dogs. And I stayed still, tucked quietly into the pale morning light. My mind drifted back to the old house in Indiana. That 2-story home with the sloped roof and dusty windows no one cleaned anymore. Every time I returned, I had to clean my own room, fix loose outlets, or wash the piled-up dishes because Brianna was too tired. I had always assumed my presence came with responsibility. Each time I crossed that threshold, I became the hardworking, quiet, reliable, and accommodating version of myself. That afternoon, another message came in. Not from Mom. From Brianna. Just one sentence. Amazing how someone can abandon the whole family just because she wasn't invited to dinner. So mature. I looked at it and smiled faintly. It didn't hurt. Just felt tired. Tired like a cheap accusation meant to cover helplessness. I didn't respond. I didn't delete it either. I left it there, proof that she hadn't changed. Still convinced the only pain that mattered was her own. I slipped the phone into a drawer, turned on the radio to a soft jazz station, and started prepping lunch. Carrot soup with mashed potatoes. Simple, warm, and gentle like a whisper in the heart. I used my small cast-iron pot, tasting spoon by spoon with surprising patience. No one rushing me. No one complaining. No one nudging me saying, "Hurry up, Haley." Just me and the quiet bubbling of soup on the stove. That afternoon, the temperature dropped further. The news warned of record-breaking cold. I imagined the house in Indiana. Thin walls, drafty windows, a roof patched with plywood. They would definitely be cold. And a part of me wanted to act. Call the heating oil company, relink my card and say, "Deliver today, please." But I didn't. I took a thin blanket to the sofa, turned on the space heater near my feet, and sat down with a novel I'd bought last month but never had time to read. The pages smelled a little old, the cover edges worn, but the words inside were vivid and full. For the first time in years, I didn't feel like I was avoiding anything. I was just being still, in the right place at the right time with the right version of myself. Night fell earlier than usual. Outside, the street lamps cast a warm amber glow over the white snow. I pulled out my phone again just to check the weather. But another message popped up. This time from Mom. Order. Haley, the house is down to 28 degrees. Your dad's coughing badly. Do you know what to do? I sat with that message for a long time. I didn't feel angry. I didn't feel pity either. I just felt tired. Tired because every time they said, "Do you know what to do?" it meant, "You're going to fix this. Like always, right?" I put the phone down. Didn't turn it off. Didn't reply. I got up, poured myself another cup of ginger tea, walked to the balcony and opened the door just a bit to let in a rush of cold air, reminding me that outside life goes on without needing to cling to what's already broken. I shut the door, closed the curtain and turned on my desk lamp. In my small, warm apartment, no one asked me to cook. No one said I was doing too much. I quietly sliced bread, spread butter and began making dinner, the first one in years made just for me. The call came on a Tuesday afternoon, while I was sorting old bills and changing out my bedding for winter. A strange number showed up, an Indiana area code. I paused, stared at the phone for a moment, then picked up without speaking first, just waiting for the voice on the other end. "Hello, is this MS? Haley Moore?" A male voice, polite, slightly hesitant, like someone unsure whether they should even be making this call. "This is Haley," I answered calmly. "Yes, this is David calling from Home Warm Energy. I'm reaching out regarding the heating oil contract for the property at 91 Maple Street in Bloomington, Indiana. We noticed the previous contract has expired and the auto payments have stopped. The homeowners haven't responded. Since the account used to be under your name, I wanted to confirm whether you plan to renew or continue payment." I listened, then set the half-folded sheet down. My eyes wandered to the window where snow was starting to fall harder. And nothing inside me hesitated. "I'm no longer responsible for that house," I said clearly. "I canceled the contract earlier this month and won't be continuing payments." A pause on the other end. "Understood. I just needed confirmation since the system still has your info. Thank you for your time." "Thank you for your service all this time," I replied, then ended the call myself. I sat quietly on the bed for a while. Not because I felt relieved, but because I knew I had just closed a door that had been left open far too long. A door I had kept unlatched from the inside, letting others come and go, slowly taking pieces of my energy and trust. The messages started pouring in just a few hours later. "Mom, Haley, your dad's been coughing all night. It's freezing. I've got a fever, I'm shivering nonstop. Brianna, of course. Cut off all support and go silent. Are you waiting for us to freeze to death just so you can feel important?" I didn't read the rest. I closed my phone, set it aside, and reached for the book I'd left unfinished on the table beside the sofa. I added another log to the electric fireplace. Its soft crackling sounded like rain tapping gently against a wooden window frame. Warm yellow light spread across the small room, climbing the wall that held an old painting I'd found at a secondhand store 2 years ago. I sat down, opened the book, but my eyes didn't follow the words. My mind wandered to the long snow-covered road that led to my family's old house. I could see every corner of it in my head. The armchair Dad always sat in to read the paper, the chipped edge of the dining table where I did my 7th grade homework, and the kitchen where I used to cook dinner for everyone while Mom was in the hospital. Now that house was turning cold. The pipes might already be freezing, the paint on the walls fading into gray from the lack of warmth. I knew what was happening. Dad had probably sold the old pickup, the silver-blue Ford that drove me to school so many times, just to afford some heating oil. Maybe he was grumbling next to the loud space heater in the living room. Mom, curled under an old wool blanket, probably wrapped in 2 layers and still trembling. Brianna was likely texting her friends, still convinced all of this was my fault, still refusing to get up from the chair she never left to go to work. I had imagined that scene many times. And I always thought that if the day ever came, I'd be crushed with guilt. But I wasn't. I didn't feel joy, but I didn't feel pain either. It just felt calm. Strangely calm. Because I had lived in that cycle for far too long. Every winter I cast myself as the rescue team. I lived in their fears, filled the gaps no one else would step into. But what I hadn't realized was, I was living in the cold too. A different kind of cold. The kind that grows from emotional isolation, from being unseen, from unheard words. I kept them warm while I curled inward under the weight of quiet sacrifices that were never acknowledged. Now I sat by my own little fireplace holding a cup of cinnamon tea, and I wasn't cold. Not because someone else needed my warmth. Not because I was bracing myself to shelter those who never asked if I had anything left to give. I wasn't cold, and I didn't feel guilty for that. That night I went to bed early. I drew the curtains shut, blew out the peppermint candle, and lay down with no expectation of any message arriving. I was no longer the person they reached out to only when something needed fixing. And instead of feeling empty, I felt more full than I had in a very long time. On Thanksgiving morning, I woke up before there was enough daylight to illuminate my apartment. The city was still wrapped in silence, broken only by the wind whistling through the window cracks and the soft white snow covering the streets. I brewed a strong cup of coffee, toasted 2 slices of bread, and sliced up a few orange wedges, placing them neatly on a ceramic plate I always used when I needed to remind myself that everything here was built by me. I was curled up on the sofa watching an old documentary on my small TV when the doorbell rang. Not loud. Not aggressive. Just 3 short firm chimes. I tilted my head slightly, listening again to make sure it wasn't just the wind. Then 3 more chimes. More deliberate. I got up, walking slowly toward the door. My fleece slippers barely made a sound on the wood floor. I peeked through the peephole. It was my father. He stood there in a worn, thick wool coat, cheeks flushed red from the cold, his breath visible in little puffs of mist. Snow had gathered on his shoulders and hat. His eyes shifted nervously, a mixture of discomfort and embarrassment. His hands were empty, clasped in front of him like he was trying to keep himself warm. I held my hand on the doorknob for a few seconds. Then I turned it gently, opening the door just wide enough for the icy wind to slip in, but not wide enough for him to step through. "Haley," he said, his voice a mix of frustration and urgency. "We need to talk." I didn't answer. I just looked at him, my gaze not cruel but clear enough for him to understand that he no longer had default access to this threshold. "You're punishing the whole family over one comment made in the heat of the moment?" He pushed on, his tone sharpening. "Your mother has a high fever. Brianna hasn't left her room all day. I had to borrow money from the neighbors just to get a little heating oil. What are you doing?" My tone stayed even. Not soft. Not sharp. "I'm not punishing anyone. I just stopped doing what I never should have been doing in the first place. It was just a small mistake," he said through gritted teeth. "Sisters fight. Does it have to be this serious?" I let out a quiet laugh, but not out of amusement. That laugh wasn't for him. It was for me. For every time I'd allowed others to define what small meant. "You call erasing me from Thanksgiving dinner a small mistake?" I asked, locking eyes with him. "You call choosing Brianna's comfort over acknowledging my presence small? Kicking me out of the family space just because she needed peace was nothing?" He looked down at his feet, then back up. His anger faded into weariness. "Brianna, she's more fragile. You've always been the strong one. No one stays strong when they're constantly left behind," I said softly. I wasn't strong. I was silent. Another gust of wind swept through the hallway, making him flinch. He pulled his collar tighter, looking at me like a lost man asking for shelter. "Your mother really is sick, Haley. She hasn't eaten since yesterday. The house is so cold, the tap water's nearly frozen. We can't manage this." I opened the door a little wider. Just enough for him to see the inside of my apartment. The warm lamp glow from the desk, the small electric heater by the sofa glowing red, the tidy dining table with a dried flower vase at the center. Nothing extravagant, but peaceful and enough. A space I built myself. No loans. No strings. "You see this?" I said gently. "I didn't cut anyone off. I just stopped paying." He froze. "Heating oil, electricity, water, internet. All in my name. Over the past 3 years, more than $8,000. I never asked for thanks. I did it because I thought it was right. But when I got pushed out of the dinner table, just to make things easier for Brianna, that changed. He stared inside like he was seeing all that I had carried. His face tightened. There were no more excuses. Nothing left to deflect or deny. "So you did this to make us wake up?" he asked without any sharpness. "No," I shook my head. "I did this to give myself peace. I can't live my life only being mentioned when there's a bill to pay. You may not see me, but I won't keep pretending I don't exist." He stood there in silence. Snow continued to fall on his shoulders and ice began to form in his hair. In his eyes, something started to crumble. A slow collapse of overdue realization for all that had slipped away. I didn't say more. I didn't shut the door either. I just stood there letting him see what I had now. A warmth not built from pity or forced duty. A warmth I made on my own. A life no one directed and no one erased. And after what felt like a very long moment, he slowly turned away. His heavy steps left clear prints in the fresh white snow. 3 days after that doorstep encounter, I got a call that shook me more than I expected. That afternoon, I had just come back from work, still holding a bag of groceries when my phone buzzed. The screen showed a familiar name, Rachel. My cousin on my mother's side, the only person in our extended family who had ever treated me with basic respect. No judgment. No drama. We weren't close, but we kept in touch every few months, like two distant branches trying not to sever completely from the same root. I picked up the phone, barely having a chance to say hello before Rachel's voice came through, urgent and straightforward, like every time she had something important to say. "Haley, are you home? I wasn't sure if I should call, but I think you need to hear this." I set the grocery bag on the kitchen counter, pulled out a chair and sat down. "What's going on?" She let out a long breath on the other end like she was trying to soften the blow, but in the end the truth came out bare and unfiltered. "I just stopped by the hospital. My cousin, she works in accounting over in inpatient services, quietly mentioned something to me. Your mom, Sue, was flagged for late payment on some medical bills from last year. They were supposed to be settled right after the emergency visit in December, but they weren't fully paid off until March." I gripped the phone tighter. "That can't be. I transferred the money to Mom at the beginning of January. I specifically said it was for hospital expenses. That account," Rachel slowed down, "wasn't used for the hospital. Or at least not all of it. I don't know how much you sent, but part of that money your mom withdrew and transferred directly to Brianna." I stood up and walked over to the window looking out over the street. Traffic was light. The lights in the shop downstairs had just flicked on for the holiday. I stood there half in disbelief, half not surprised. "Remember when Brianna opened that little spa?" Rachel continued. "Your mom co-signed the loan for it. But I just found out something worse." I didn't say a word. My heart was pounding like it already knew the worst hadn't been said yet. "Last month," she said softly, "your dad came by my house asking for help filing an insurance claim for his old car. While we were talking, he slipped up and complained that the savings account they'd had since his working days was basically empty. I asked him about it and he said, Brianna took most of it. Said her mom gave permission." I spun around. "Wait, my mom agreed to that?" Rachel paused for a moment, then said, "No. I think Brianna forged her signature." It felt like the floor dropped out from under me. I took a step back, leaning against the wall. My hand was still clutching the phone like it was the only thing tethering me to reality. "I'm not totally sure," Rachel said more quietly, "but I used to work in banking. And based on what he said, the timing of the transaction, your mom was in the hospital after that hypertensive episode. There's no way she signed those transfer documents. It's possible Brianna got a hold of her old paperwork and filled it in. I don't have proof, but something about what he said didn't sit right." The small room around me was strangely quiet. The sound of a car passing outside felt like it was getting swallowed up by the silence. I closed my eyes, then opened them slowly, trying to take a steady breath. "I only called because I thought," Rachel continued, "you deserve to know." I didn't blame her. She didn't owe me any of this. But the way she spoke, clear, detailed, made me realize something even more painful than being forgotten. I wasn't just cast aside. I had been used. To the very last drop of my patience. I sat down at the dining table staring at the surface. Numbers flooded my mind like a sudden wave. All the transfers I had made, all the notes I'd written in the memos, all the bank statements I'd saved. I thought I was doing the responsible thing, picking up where others had left off. But the truth was, I had become the silent wallet, the endless source of money, the cushion for every mistake others kept choosing to make. "Is there anything else?" asked my voice rough. "I know what I said might hurt you," Rachel replied gently. "But if you're thinking about cutting off all support, I figured you needed to see the whole picture. They're not telling you the truth, Haley. You've done way too much. And they've gotten used to that, to the point where they believe you'll never stop." I nodded, unsure if she could hear it through the phone. "Thank you, Rachel. I really mean it. Anytime, just call me," she said, then hung up. I sat still for a long time. Then I got up, walked over to my desk, opened my laptop, and pulled up the spreadsheet I'd been keeping. I scrolled down through the entries over the past 3 years. Read each line. Looked at every detail. Hospital bills. Not used as intended. Living expenses. Diverted to my sister. Utilities. Electricity, water, heating. Covered by me for people who pretended not to know how to log into an account. I closed the laptop. I didn't cry. No tears fell. There was only a quiet understanding, sharp and clear like the sound of snow falling outside the window. I realized that some wounds don't need blood to be dangerous. They sit deep, they root themselves in silence, and it's only when the light of truth shines in that you realize just how long you've been standing in the dark. 3 days after Rachel's call, I got a message from a coworker on the night shift. She included a TikTok link with the caption, "Is this your relative?" I clicked the link, not expecting much. But as the video played, Brianna's face appeared on my screen. Light makeup, eyes red, with a dimly lit room behind her lit only by a candle. Her voice was shaky, like she was trying hard to hold it together but couldn't stop the tears from welling up. "I'm sorry, everyone, I don't know how else to let this out," Brianna began, her voice trembling. "I've never shared anything about my family, but right now, our house is so cold we can barely survive." She paused, lowered her head. A single tear ran down her cheek, slow, dramatic, like a soap opera scene. "Hi, sister." She took a deep breath. "Haley." She cut off all financial support right when we needed it most. "My dad has a bad cough, my mom has a fever, and we don't have enough money to fix the heating system. She won't answer our texts, won't take calls, like she was never part of this family at all." She dropped her head into her hands, shoulders shaking as if she was truly crying. The video was under 3 minutes long, but it stirred a tidal wave of reactions from viewers. Comments poured in like a flood. "What kind of sister is Haley? How can someone be so heartless to their own parents? Anyone know this girl's info? I need to ask her where her brain is." I wasn't shocked. I wasn't angry. I just felt empty. I had always known Brianna could twist the truth to fit the victim role she so desperately clung to. But seeing her do it in front of hundreds of thousands of people, while I still had every receipt, every bill, every email, wasn't painful anymore. It was utter disappointment. What made it worse, the video spread fast. Within 6 hours, it had over 250,000 views and thousands of comments. Other social media pages started resharing it. Some people even tagged #HaleyHeartless. I was tagged in a few posts from random accounts. Anonymous messages started showing up in my inbox. Most of them were attacks. I sat still, read a few lines, then closed my phone. No explanation. No deactivation. No response of any kind. I thought about my mother, the one who once looked at me in the kitchen and said, "Don't blame your sister, she's just sensitive." I thought about my father, the one who called my actions punishing the whole family. And then I thought about myself, the person who emptied her entire emergency savings to help them fix the roof after that snowstorm 2 winters ago, who once stood outside a grocery store choosing between buying meat or saving the money to send back to Indiana. But right then everything changed. An event I never saw coming. The following evening, while I was prepping dinner, I received a message from Rachel. "Have you seen this? Someone posted your bank statements online." I opened my phone, searched TikTok, and instantly found a trending video, "The Truth Behind the Heartless Sister" story. The video was uploaded by an anonymous account named @JustTheTruthMidwest. The voice was AI generated, no face revealed, just a slideshow of screenshots from real documents. It opened with the line, "Before you throw stones at someone, check carefully where you're aiming." Then the images appeared one by one. Bank transfer statements with my name, the amounts, dates, and detailed descriptions. January 12th, $620 oil refill for heating. March 3rd, $480, furnace repair. August 21st, $1,000, emergency hospital fee, transferred to Susan Moore. Alongside that was an email confirmation from the heating oil company titled, "Payment Confirmation, Account, Haley Moore, Service Address, 91 Maple Street." Each image had a caption, "This so-called heartless sister spent over $8,000 in the past 3 years on a family that now pushes her aside because her younger sister needs peace." The final slide showed a screenshot of Brianna's tearful video, next to the caption, "You're seeing the tears. But have you ever asked, who's been wiping away others' tears all these years?" The comments section filled up by the minute. "She's not cold. She's just exhausted. I used to believe Brianna. Not anymore. Haley, if you're reading this, just know we're on your side." Public opinion flipped overnight. Accounts that once criticized me quietly deleted their comments. Some even sent apology messages. But what truly stunned me was Brianna's response. 3 hours after the anonymous video went live, Brianna locked her personal TikTok account. All her videos vanished. The pages that had reshared her content took it down. Then came silence. No more videos, no more comments. Only the undeniable evidence remained, showing that the one they labeled as cruel had only ever been trying to protect herself. I sat alone in my living room, a desk lamp casting warm light over the polished wood table. There was no victory. No gloating. Just a silence so deep I could hear my own steady breathing. My shoulders dropped, and the heat from the space heater by my feet warmed my hands wrapped around a mug of peppermint tea. I didn't need to prove anything anymore. And surprisingly, I didn't need to forgive, not just yet. I just needed to stand in my truth. No one scripting it for me, twisting it, or speaking in my place. Just me. And that was enough. Clearer than ever. I was slicing apples to make a simple fruit plate for dinner when the doorbell rang. Not rushed, not insistent. Just one short chime. Enough to be noticed, enough to say someone was waiting. I checked the time. 6:17 p.m. It was already dark outside, the coldest evening of the week. 9 degrees Fahrenheit. Everything was strangely still, and just as I approached the door, something instinctive made me pause for a few seconds before peering through the peephole. It was my mother. She stood there, wrapped in a thick scarf, her old fur-lined coat worn at the shoulders, clutching a frayed handbag to her chest like it held the last warmth in her body. Her face tilted slightly toward the door, her eyes brimming, not quite with tears, not quite with shame, but something I couldn't yet name. Snow clung to her hat and shoulders. She looked like a misplaced figure in a frozen painting. I opened the door just a crack, letting a gust of wind bite at my cheeks. She looked at me. "Could I come in for a few minutes?" I gave a small nod and stepped aside. She entered slowly. Removing her scarf, she brushed snow off her hands, her eyes scanning my cozy little living room. Maybe she hadn't expected it to be so warm, so orderly. She sat on the couch, carefully as if afraid to disturb the air. I poured her a cup of hot ginger tea and took the chair across from her. Neither of us spoke for a full minute. "I know you don't want to see me right now," she began, her voice trembling slightly, unsure if from the cold or what she was about to say. I didn't respond. "But I have no one else to ask," she continued. "Your father can't get approved for any loans. The car's been sold. We're out of money. And Brianna." She hesitated. I spoke up, my voice even. "She lost her job. And moved in with friends." Her eyes widened. "How did you know?" "I know more than you think," I said. "About the money I sent being used to pay Brianna's debts. About the savings account being drained with a forged signature. I know it all." She lowered her head, lips pressed tight. I thought she might apologize. But no. When she looked up, her eyes glistened, not with remorse, but with something raw and unmistakable: desperation. "I came here about the house," she said. "The bank issued a final notice. If we don't make the next installment this month, they'll repossess it. I can't lose it, Haley. I sat still, my heart slowly closing like a door no one was holding open anymore. I need you to co-sign a loan, she continued, gently placing a printed document from the bank on the table. Just your signature and I'll be able to keep the house. Your father and I, we have no one else. I looked at the paper, then into her eyes. There was no regret. No real wish to make amends. Just a woman clinging to the one person she knew still had the power to save her. Not out of love, but out of convenience. You didn't come to apologize, I said slowly. You came for a signature. Haley, she began, her voice slightly choked. I know I was wrong to let you carry so much alone. But I'm old now. I have no other way. I need your help. I shook my head. No. What you need is for me to pay. She looked up as if ready to argue but lowered her gaze again. I spent my whole youth in the shadow of a daughter you loved more, I continued. I did everything a child could do. Sent money, repaired the house, paid the bills, covered hospital expenses. I never once asked for anything. But when I needed a seat at the family table, you looked the other way. She reached out to take my hand, but I gently pulled it back. That house, I said, has technically been mine for years. Every function inside ran on the money I sent. But it was never my home. No one waited for me. No one asked if I was okay. No one saved me a seat. Her eyes welled with tears, but she didn't dare cry. If you want to save that house, I said, my voice calm like telling an old dream, then ask the one who always had a seat at the table while I stood outside. Ask your real daughter. Because I can't save a place that never once gave me a reason to stay. She fell silent. A quiet filled the small room. The ticking wall clock grew louder than usual. I stood up, picked up the bank document, folded it neatly, and placed it back into the worn purse she had brought. You should go. It's cold out. She said nothing more. Just nodded, then stood up and wrapped her scarf back around her neck. Before stepping out, she turned to look at me one more time. Not in blame. Not in pleading. Just a look that didn't know whether to hope or to let go. I opened the door, a cold wind slapping both sides of my face. She stepped out, turned toward the stairs, her steps slow and heavy, never looking back. I closed the door. Quietly. Not locking it just yet. I returned to the kitchen. The bowl of apples still sat half-finished on the table. I resumed slicing, each piece thin and even, laying them on the plate as if nothing had interrupted. Because maybe, in the end, the only thing I needed to keep steady was the life I had built for myself. Each slice, each cut, each step no longer trembling for anyone else. The snow melted later than usual that year. Not until mid-March did the street leading into my old neighborhood finally reveal patches of black asphalt between streaks of gray slush. I drove slowly, not because the road was slippery but because I knew I was heading toward a place that no longer belonged to me. 91 Maple Street came into view after the bend, looking not too different from the last time I'd driven by, but also nothing like the memories I still held. The porch paint peeled, a second-floor window had a missing pane clumsily patched with cardboard. The lawn had turned yellow and flattened against the ground as if trying to dodge the wind. The wildflowers my mother once planted along the walkway were gone, replaced by brittle vines curling around a rotting fence. I parked a short distance away, left the engine running, and didn't step out right away. In front of me stood the house that once held Sunday afternoons, laughter in the kitchen and arguments around the dinner table, now lying still as if exhausted from the weight of memory. When I was a child, each spring my mother would place sprigs of lavender into a ceramic vase on the kitchen windowsill. I remember the scent and how sunlight filtered through lace curtains, casting warm patterns on the wooden table where I studied and chewed pens while struggling through my first English essays. My father would be reading the newspaper in the living room, the radio humming news in the background, static cutting through the anchor's voice, and the sound of my mother slicing fruit in the kitchen. But all of that now lived only in fragments, like a cracked mirror that could never be pieced back together. I turned off the engine and stepped out. The spring wind still carried a leftover bite from winter. I zipped my coat higher and walked slowly toward the house. The melting snow pooled in sparkling puddles that reflected my image, shifting and unclear like a girl I no longer recognized from long ago. I stopped right at the gate. A section of the old wooden fence had broken off. The gate itself left ajar as if waiting for a familiar hand to push it open. But I didn't go in. I just stood there and looked. No one lived there anymore. I knew that. After the bank repossessed the house, my parents and Brianna moved into a small rental apartment on the southern edge of Bloomington. I didn't know the exact address, nor did I care to. My cousin Rachel mentioned it once. 2 bedrooms, cheap laminate floors, paper-thin walls where you could hear every step from the neighbors upstairs. No one shared more, and I didn't ask. I looked up at the second-floor window that once belonged to my room. The old beige curtain was still there, one corner flapping through a cracked opening. That room once had my posters and sticky notes all over the walls, even a world map with red dots marking places I dreamed of visiting. New York, Boston, Portland, and a big question mark right over Paris. I remember curling up on the bed, reading To Kill a Mockingbird, imagining a life where I wouldn't have to shrink just to fit the narrow spaces others built for me. And now I had that life. I didn't need to step back into that old room to know I had made the right choice. I stood a while longer, letting the wind brush through my hair, the sunlight warming my face as if asking whether I felt anything at all. Regret? A dull ache? A pull worth returning to? No. Just silence. I turned away. No slamming doors. No tears. No regret. I simply walked. That afternoon I returned to my apartment. A place small but entirely mine, from the worn velvet armchair to the cinnamon oil diffuser in the corner. I switched on the warm overhead light in the living room, made myself a mug of hot cocoa, and brought a book out to the balcony. The city buzzed beneath me, but from up high I could see tree branches beginning to bud after the long snow. I sat down, pulled a wool blanket over my legs, and opened a new book. Every word stood bold and steady, like the breath of someone no longer in a rush. No one was hurrying me. No one was asking me to give up my warmth. I no longer needed to freeze myself just to help someone else survive their winter. I used to think love meant endurance, meant silence, sacrifice, draining yourself so others wouldn't fall. But real love never asks you to disappear so someone else can exist. I haven't forgiven everything, but I've chosen something greater than forgiveness: peace. And on that quiet spring evening, under the glow of soft light and the sound of pages turning on a balcony I owned, I knew one thing for sure. This winter I was no longer trembling. I had finally learned how to keep myself warm. And maybe, just maybe, that was the kindest thing I'd ever done for myself after all these years. What do you think about my choice? I walked away, stopped carrying the burden, and chose to keep my peace instead of holding on to an empty relationship. Some might say I was too cold. Others would say I did the right thing. But between love and saving yourself, which would you choose? If you've ever been in a situation where you had to sacrifice for a family that didn't see your worth, or were the only one holding everything together, please share your feelings in the comments. I truly want to hear your story. And if you're interested in real-life family stories about loss, struggle, but also strength and awakening like this, please subscribe to the channel. Every week we bring you heartfelt, honest stories that might just be part of your life or someone you know. Thank you for listening. See you in the next story.